last night. Hi guys. Not sure if I'm getting this correct. Let's see. Give me a sec. Just making sure everything's working as intended. Okay, I think things are working as intended. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, on the topic, well, welcome to Misty with JYK, and today we'll talk about Chinese airports. There are a few of them that are public, quite a bit more than, say, American airports. Most of those are publicly run and not for sale. Okay, let's first look at an overview. So I have this thing shared. It's in the description of the live stream, so you can check it out if you want. And this page is easy enough to get, but I have another page that took me like literally hours to do. So if you feel generous, you can tip me. If you don't, well, still enjoy. Anyways, so what does this mean? The largest airport in China is Beijing, and this is the thing that we really care about. The rest is not that profitable, really. This is passenger count, and this is freight, and this is number of flights, number of takeoffs and landings. But that's not where the money is, really. It's the passengers and their shopping and stuff like that. So Beijing Airport is the largest, with about 100 million passenger count, and that is quite large. There are very few airports in the world that is actually larger than this. There are maybe, a handful. And the second largest one is Pudong, Shanghai. And Shanghai has two airports. The next one is Hangzhou, Shanghai. And if you add those two up, they actually have more passenger count than Beijing. The reason is that Shanghai really serves the Yangtze Delta region. So that's Shanghai, and some of the Hangzhou people from Hangzhou would come to Shanghai as well for flights. And definitely people in Jiangsu, the vicinity, like Suzhou or Wuxi. These are all economically very vibrant places. And even, for example, Wenzhou, they would people that are from Wenzhou are all over the world, and they typically would take a flight to Shanghai and then transit out. Sometimes they take a flight to Beijing and transfer from there to outside China. One funny thing about Wenzhou is that their airport is partially privately funded, and it was opened in 1991. And before that, they had no airports, no train stations, no high-speed road, no expressways. Their first train station was built in 2000s. It was built in the 2000s, right? So it's kind of funny. Anyways, the Shanghai airports are public, and the next one is Guangzhou Baiyun, which is in Guangzhou, obviously. That one's public. And you can see they are similarly in the same region, about 70 million passengers per year. There is also plenty of international traffic, and international traffic is obviously more profitable because people spend more money and buying tax-free, duty-free shit. And Chengdu is in the middle of China. That's like the hub in the middle of China, and unfortunately that's not publicly traded. Shenzhen Airport is publicly traded. That one is now lower, definitely a lower level. Now you're at half, 50 million passengers. And if you go down the list, the next one, well, this one is Hangzhou. It's where I'm from, and that's actually fairly close to Shanghai, so there's a bit of competition going on. Same thing goes on for between Shenzhen and Guangzhou. These are, if you remember my GSH videos, they're about an hour away, bit more than an hour away by reasonably fast train, and if you take a high-speed train, 45 minutes. And then the next one you can buy is Xiamen Gaoqi, and this one has its own quirks, very high dividend yield. The name almost strikes me as Japanese. I wonder what the deal is. I think then you don't have anything that's buyable, and then you have this one, Haikou Meilan, which is the one that I said has a lot of hairiness, a lot of hair on it. Has liquidity issues. Has a parent company that's short on cash that's probably going bankrupt. The parent company, either bankrupt or taken apart. And what else you can buy? I think that's all the Chinese airports that you can buy. Everything else, first, you may not even want to buy them because they have less than 10 million passengers per year. The smallest you can buy is basically Haikou Meilan. I think has 24 million passengers per year. Okay, and in terms of growth, you can see most of them is increasing, except Beijing. It's not that Beijing's economy is faltering. It's really the airspace on top of Beijing capital airport is too congested. So they had a lot of delays, and when you have delays, you get hit with a penalty to the number of the flights that you can actually do. Like the flights, for example, if they initially allow you, let's say 20 flights per hour, they would take that down to, let's say, 17 to reduce the amount of congestion. Beijing Airport is really at capacity. The thing was designed for 88 million passengers, not 100. So it basically was over capacity. Okay, so that's that. And this sheet took me hours to get the data. Let's put this thing date. This is passenger count. This is entire China, not counting international. And this is year over year. And if you see the graph, this is when the lockdown happened. And this has been the trend. So the lowest has gone to is more than 90% down. Maybe I should. Anyways, the red thing is percentage. They basically track each other, right? So the red thing is percentage, and then the blue thing is absolute. You have some mismatch here between those two lines because the Lunar New Year is not exactly on the same date in Gregorian calendar. But once you get past that couple of days, things start to track each other fairly closely, which makes sense. And even up to now, we're down about 75%. So 70-75% depending on the day. There is this 80% down. That's because there was another holiday in here that skews the data a bit. There is I think it's Qingmingjie. I think that's when you go to remember your dead. It has like a 3-day, basically a long weekend. So this might be what's going to happen to every single airport in the world, and it's already been almost 2 months and a half, going to 3 soon. So in another 12 days will be 3 months of lost revenue, basically. And this has definitely an impact on all the airports. But the bigger impact is really on the airlines. The airports, most of them are better capitalized and have a lower fee structure, a low cost structure. So a lot safer from my point of view. All right, so let's look through them one by one. First one we'll look at is Shenzhen Airport. Shenzhen is right next to Hong Kong. So, in fact, when Hong Kong had a riot, Shenzhen Airport had a bit of bump. I think that's I think this was the bump that was caused by the Hong Kong riot or something. Basically, Chinese that would have taken a transfer in Hong Kong don't. So they basically take off from Shenzhen and go somewhere else to transfer. Otherwise, people in Shenzhen might just cross the border, go into Hong Kong, and take a plane from there. In terms of PB, it's 1.29, and PE is pretty high, but the PE is not. You don't really value these things at PE multiples. You really look at them in terms of free cash flow, and that's what you care about. Right. So what happened to Shenzhen Airport? They built a new terminal. I think these are a terminal, or let's see. Yeah, they are also going to build another terminal. I think they're building another runway. So they're investing fairly heavily. Are they going to have overcapacity? No, I'm not sure, because I think that region has enough population, enough economic activity, and yeah, so I wouldn't worry about them going over capacity, but obviously they're going to be hit really hard with the virus. And you can see the dividend yield is only 1%, right? But long term they perform very well. Let's get rid of this thing. Just get rid of that. Yeah, it doesn't change it that much. What I just did was I ignored. So on Chinese websites you have this thing which adds back dividend to the stock price. I just got rid of that. So you actually see historical prices without the effect of adding back the dividend. Okay, so what does this thing have? So on this website, you have, what the fuck? That's weird. I had some stuff coming up on my phone. Anyways, so what do they have? You can see this tealish thing. It's not even teal. This is greenish, yellow greenish thing. Is basically things that's still under construction, and you can see that they had a period of time. Let's make them as long as possible. Right. So you can see, now they change color, right? Fantastic. Now it's pink. So you can see that these are periods of time where they take up large amount of their asset. Most of their asset in this case is actually fixed things that are actually not producing. These are things that are still under construction. And if we look at their stock performance since 2013, let's make it a little, yeah. This is what happens, but obviously there's a bull market. But even disregarding that bull market, I think they still did fairly well. 2013 is here. The bull market really started somewhere here, so they did okay. And their stock has been going nowhere since, and essentially they are just paying back their debt, but now they're investing again. So there's gonna be a while since you see your dividend payback, but if they invest wisely, if their capital allocation is okay, then you would eventually see your money back. It's not a bad company by any means, and you're not paying hugely for them. The only thing you would worry about is probably debt. They don't really have any interest-paying debt. That's interest-bearing debt. That's why they're now investing. These guys are like, oh, we have money now. We need to invest. We need to, increase the size of the airport. So yeah, it's fairly highly utilized though, and people generally don't have much complaints about this place. And let's see. Okay, so that's that one. So the next one is like on the complete opposite side in terms of Chinese airports. It has a 7% dividend yield, and it trades similarly in terms of PB. Now you're like asking, why is that? Well, this thing is in Xiamen. Xiamen has two things going. Well, Xiamen as a city has one thing going against it, and then the airport has something going against it. So first of all, Xiamen is next to Taiwan, and if in case there's a war, this is going to be the front line. The place is going to be bombarded to shit, right, on both sides. So that's one major risk factor. But you could argue, like, if China gets into war with, say, US, then maybe Beijing and Shanghai will be bombed to shit. But either way, people see the risk of a war with Taiwan as a lot more real. And in fact, for a period of time, the entire province, essentially Fujian, was considered as potential front lines, and there wasn't much emphasis in putting in Fujian to make it economically investing in Fujian. There was definitely a sense of that. So that's something going against Xiamen. And then this place is basically a high-tech manufacturing / tourist place. And I've been there in 1997, only once though. It's been a really long time ago. The only thing I remember about that trip was that the hotel was about 200 yuan per night. And back then, that was fairly expensive. That was like $30+ per night. Actually, slightly less than 30, because back then, dollars to Chinese yuan was about 1 to 8. So the next thing going against is Xiamen Airport. Xiamen is building the next airport, and we have no idea when they're gonna get it built. We don't know. Basically, there's a lot of unknowns regarding this company, and then other than outside these significant bull markets, where they they would go up like 4x. Outside those, you basically back to where you were in 2010. But obviously back then it was a lot more expensive. People were also a bit more insane back then. So we don't know how long, and I think, let me just check that to make sure I'm not spitting bullshit. I think they're even retiring it. I think, yeah, they're doing this. See, they're building this thing called the Xiang'an Airport, and so what's going on was they are saying that by the time this thing is built, Gaoqi Airport's international airlines and most of the trunk domestic lines will be moved to the new airport, and Gaoqi Airport will be made for freight, and stuff like that. So if you're going for freight and shorter lines, like feeder lines, then obviously you don't make as much money. Well, ask, say, Stansted, for example, right? Why Ryanair flies out of Stansted instead of Heathrow? Because Stansted is cheaper, and if you're a cheaper airport, then you, by definition, don't make much money. So that's the major reason people are not bidding up the price of this company. Okay, so in terms of their assets, they really don't have anything under construction. This is basically it. Next one is Meilan Konggang. This is the only I think they call it 5-star. Star Treks has some airport ranking stuff. Star Treks has Some airport blah, 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 blah. World airport thing. I think I've talked about this before. They have some, best airports in the world of some sort, and I have a connection problem. Thank you very much. Anyways, they are the only Chinese airport that's on that list. They had a bunch of liquidity issues. In 2019, they had like all their debts due on the same year, which is completely insane. They have a really bad habit of changing name every year, and then they did an equity raise in 2019, which kind of solved their liquidity problem. They're in Hainan, and they're not in the most touristy place of Hainan, which is in the southern tip, which is called Sanya. That airport is unfortunately not public. This one is in Haikou, which is the capital of Hainan, and mostly still tourism and nothing much else. The only way to get to Hainan is by a boat or ships or air. There is no bridge. There's no tunnel coming from mainland. Right, so that's that. We don't know if there will be a tunnel built at some point. I assume there will be, but yeah. But even that, it's gonna be like decades away. So this thing, if you look at their debt, very different from what you see compared to this guy. This thing has like a 13% leverage ratio. This thing has 55. And then they're also, if you look at their quick ratio, it's also very low. So this thing always had people were worried that it was going bankrupt, but I don't think it would, because the government really does want it to expand, and it's not expanding into bullshit things. It was building another runway to expand capacity to prepare for future growth in tourism, and I think that's coming. But obviously now we have this virus. Tourism is the last thing you want to be associated with, but this thing is very cheap as an airport. If you look at the absolute value, it's selling at 3.7 billion yuan. So divide that by 7, $500 million to get yourself an airport. As Russell Peters will say, save 50 cents here, 50 cents there, then you get $1. You go to the dollar store, you get yourself something. Anyway, so this guy, if we go back to here, if we refer back to here, in terms of amount of money you have to pay per passenger is very low. I know it's a bad metric. You have to compare that with enterprise value if you want to be strict, but this is just an idea. So Xiamen Gaoqi was 27 million. This thing is 24. This is basically the same thing. This stuff is double the price, right? So, and that's also very cheap. And Shenzhen Airport is double the size of mainland, and then that thing is 15 billion yuan, and this is yuan. That one's in Hong Kong dollars, right? And then there's like a 1.1, 1.2 time difference there. So it's like, quite a bit more, about 5 times, 6 times the price. So that's that. I currently own this company, but I don't own any Shenzhen for now. The next one is Beijing Airport. Well, this is has one thing going for it. Obviously, it's in the capital of China, and it will survive. There's a new airport that has been built. They're transferring some flights over to the new airport. So for the next 2-3 years, traffic will be down in Beijing Capital Airport. We don't know if that airport would eventually end up in the in this public companies through some kind of buyout. And if that buyout happens, we don't know if that's going to be at a fair price. And there was also talk by the leader of this company saying that would make some more investment. I don't quite understand why, but they have no debt at the moment, and the stock price has been down quite a bit since previous highs. It was at almost 3 times as high as now, and it's essentially the same company. Dividend is reasonable, but this year, as I said, the everybody's gonna get bad, and if you, unfortunately, this is it's a Hong Kong listed company, so in the Xingren, which is the thing where I'm looking at, the website I'm looking at, you don't really get the broken down types of assets, which is quite useful. Very, very nice visualization. So well done, Bing, if you're watching. He's the guy that built this website. And but if you look at the dividends, they've been consistently paying dividends. Right? The red stuff is a dividend they've been paying. This one was lower, well, because their profit ended up lower because in 2018, late 2018, there was an announcement that the government would no longer rebate them for some fee that they're collecting. All right, so the next one is Beijing Jichang, which is by far the most controversial one. This stuff, as you can see, has a very high PE, like 35, and very low dividend yield. And you're like, why are you getting involved in this stuff? Well, they have just turned a bunch of their asset into from under construction into actual PPE. What happens then is that now you start taking depreciation charge, and a lot of it. And typically the depreciation schedule is more pessimistic than reality. So they would account for an airport at, I don't know, 30 years, or typically 30 years. I forgot what they wrote, but they published that. So for 30 years, and they actually last quite a bit longer. Also, for the beginning of that period of depreciation, you do very little maintenance. There's very little needed. So it's actually quite a bit of understatement of their earnings. But if you look at their cash flow, I don't really want percentages. Come on. All right, here you go. This suddenly started increasing. See that? This line is the ratio between, let's do TTM. Yeah, a lot better, right? Their operating cash flow is suddenly started jumping compared to their listed, compared to their operating profit, right? Before, I think, yeah, operating profits. So arguably, this is a much better company now than it is, at least down here, 2018. Right? But if you look at the price here, 2018 started going down. So it's all very stupid. And in fact, let's see, 2018 Q2, Q4. I think the drop here was also kind of weird. They had, I forgot, there was one drop where like they were like, oh, your earning was not as good as before, but everybody kind of should have known it, because we all know a bunch of asset that was under construction is now under depreciation schedule. So you can talk to me all you want about efficient markets. I think, nah. And then the one thing you have to worry about these guys is, okay, they just did a huge amount of investment, and how's their debt? Right, so this is their debt. That's what that was the cost of their debt. So they had this mostly just short-term debt, which is kind of odd. They had 8 billion yuan of short-term debt, and it's kind of odd, but most of their short-term debt is payables, which is kind of interesting too. But if you look at here, they had a bond that they used to build their terminal. They had an expansion. They built an expansion, and that's what's driven up the debt. But it wasn't actually too bad. So I wouldn't worry at all about this airport's liquidity situation. But they have some hairs on them in the sense that it's the top two most heavily criticized public airports in China is Beijing and Guangzhou. Right, so those two are they're more bureaucratic. They have a lot of people working, not necessarily doing a lot of things, and there's probably some corruption going on, and it's just a lot of it's the stereotypical state-owned enterprise that you would associate with, like, yeah, it's just low efficiency. Let's put it that way. Do you want to get in this company? Right, if this company is selling to you at current prices, I think it's a reasonable deal. If you can get it on the book, well, it's fantastic. If you look at their long-term performance, it's actually not too bad. If you get rid of this stuff, it's not too bad. But then if you look at, if you got in at the peaks, if you got in at the peaks of 2007 bull market, then you're fucked. It's 13 years later and you haven't recouped your cost. But if you factor in dividend, you have. So I guess it goes to show that if you buy a business with a moat, even if you buy it at a super expensive price, after decades you can recoup some money. Okay, the last one is regarded as the best airport in China. The best airport, it's like it's a bit like, let's say, the best of the best. I'm trying to think of an analogy. Can't think of any, but they're basically the best airport company in China. Couple reasons. They are highly efficient. They have a lot of non-aviation related revenues, mostly coming from duty-free shops. They have a lot of international travelers, mostly to Japan and to US and Europe. So basically going to rich places, and people buy a lot of shit and then they make a lot of money. So, and you can see in terms of valuation, this is the most expensive in terms of price to book. They're done with basically all of their investment now. So all they do is kind of just pay back debt and, pay dividends. The dividend ratio is also very low at the moment. The recent drop, there's not much reason other than the virus. I mean, if your air traffic is down 60, 70, 80%, I mean, everybody's going to have all their earnings basically wiped out, and Shanghai Airport might even get hit even harder because it has the highest percentage of international travelers, and international travel is down even more compared to domestic because now you have all these travel restrictions across the border. All right, so if you look at the absolute market cap too, this is by far the biggest, 126 billion yuan, so something like 18 billion, 18 billion dollars. And if you just look at any other company, this one is 27 billion yuan divided by a 7, you're looking at 4 billion. This is 3 point something. This is actually in Hong Kong dollars, so divided by 8, yeah, 3 billion yuan, dollars, $3 billion. So that's a 4, so 3, This stuff is like 500 million. This stuff is not even 800 million, and this one is about uh, two point something billion dollars. Like huge discrepancy in terms of valuation. And as we can note again from here, this even you add both of them up in terms of traffic count, you're looking at only slightly above Beijing. But their valuation is much higher, their earning is much higher, and yeah, it's I guess the way they're born. They're born in Shanghai, not in Beijing. Shanghai is generally a lot less bureaucratic than Beijing and a lot better regulated than Guangzhou. Guangzhou is a bit of like it's almost like California in a sense. Like it, not necessarily California. The government has a lot less control over there compared to here to Shanghai. Yeah. Okay, so I thought the thing was stuck. Yeah, just good as a good measure. Let's look at their debt, right? So what their debt is, they have some payables. They have no bonds. Their bonds were all paid back in back in 2015, and yeah, no bonds, just some payables, and that's it. Okay, so now coming to some other more macro related issues. We had obviously issues in China regarding passenger count. As I showed you, things were down 70 to 90% ish. And February was arguably really hard hit. So now we can look at how hard hit February is. This is February in Eastern China, and Eastern China, is when you talk about Eastern China, you generally just think about Jiangsu, Shanghai, Zhejiang, and probably Anhui, and basically the Yangtze Delta, and then the next thing you worry about is like the Pearl River Delta. So in the entire month, there's only 5 million people, 5 million passenger count, right? And to put that into perspective, Shanghai in 2019 alone had 120 million passenger count, right? So if you divide that by 12, you're looking at 10. And this thing is at 5. So the entire Eastern China region with everything else has less passenger count than Shanghai had in a normal month. Less than half of the passenger count than Shanghai had in a month in a normal year. Down 84%. So that's the extent of damage, as you can see. Freight is down quite a bit less. And then, yeah. So, and this one is even more striking. For January, cumulatively until the end of February, the passenger count was 35 million people. So from January, which was hit for about 7 days with the virus, January was 7 times the passenger count of February. So yeah, so that's that, and then we don't have the March data yet. And you can look at these websites if you care, and then you can take a look. And in the Civil Aviation Administration of China, the actual entire for the entire country. So the one I was looking at is for, you can see HD here. It's for Eastern China. So they have like regional offices. you only have the January data, and if you look at January data, you can already see the drops. It's already showing up. The passenger count, down 6%. So this is the percentage down, and by the time you get to the next report, which is February report, it's probably going to be down quite a bit more. All right, that's all I have. Time to address whatever comments that I have. I will tip you with thoughts and prayers. No quiero thoughts and prayers. Quiero dinero. Quiero siempre más dinero. Check out Fraport in Frankfurt, Jim. Just got me some of that. Great entry chance. Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on Fraport. There are a couple of airports that I was keeping an eye on. There's Fraport, then there's one, the Paris thing, and then there's Auckland, Sydney, and airports of Thailand, and a bunch of Mexican airports. That I was so taken by the Mexican ones that I almost bought them back in 2018. They went up hugely in 2019, if I remember correctly. Then now they dropped down to even lower than like 2016 levels. Don't know the bump. Hi. Hola, si. What do you think of Gazprom? Gazprom, short-term risk is, well, what I think about them, I'm bullish. How bullish I am? I hold a lot of them. The short-term risk, well, for the bullish case, everybody kind of knows, right? So you have the new pipelines ready, and then probably they will get Nord Stream as well. Nord Stream 2 might be built if something happens. Maybe they can, do some deals. But even that, if that's not built, it's still going to be fine. The short-term risk is gas price, which has gone down since the peak in late 2018, I think. So gas price is when natural gas price is definitely a thing. And that's somewhat alleviated because if we have a reduction in shale production, then U.S. gas price will go up because a lot of U.S. gas is produced as a byproduct of shale oil. So that's one thing. The second one is obviously shutdown. I am 100% sure Russian numbers are fake. If things get bad enough, they may shut down production, and that's the second short-term risk. The long-term risk is really aging pipelines. That's the biggest risk I see. Any company you recommend to buy now, given stocks are at all-time low? They're not at all-time low. They're pretty low. They're not even pretty low. They're above historical valuation, at least in US. I have bought a little bit of this company called China. Well, shit. What do you call it? This guy. You can either buy it through this ADR or those. Basically, they just take a cut on what do you call those things? Ticket sales. They're like a fleecer. And I love fleecers. And they have a government monopoly. What do you think about Lundin? I kind of like them. Haven't checked them closely recently, though. Do you have a website? No tengo. No tengo un sitio internet. Alright. That's all. I think that's all for today. Unless you have other questions. Let me see if I had other things that I... Oh yeah, I had some more things that I wanted to share, but I'll do that later. Hopefully... one thing that I need to say is, how do you buy these Chinese listed companies? Okay, I've said it many times. Get Interactive Brokers. It has a shitty UI, but it's the only thing that is really functional. interactive brokers. Get that stuff, and you can trade on like 30 different exchanges. One of them being Hong Kong Exchange, and all these Chinese listed companies. Obviously, the Hong Kong listed companies can buy on Hong Kong Exchange, right? But even the Chinese listed ones, like the ones that have this stuff on, is buyable through Hong Kong. So if you just enter 600009 on interactive brokers, Shanghai Airport would actually pop up, and you can actually buy it through there. And then obviously you have to buy it with Chinese yuan, but I think interactive brokers would automatically short, basically borrow Chinese yuan for you, and then you can choose to close that position. You will end up with a short position of Chinese yuan and some shares of whatever you buy in China. What I recommend is to close that short position, because typically borrowing Chinese yuan offshore is very expensive, up to like 8% per year, and why take that cost? Anyway. Have you ever researched the US company Marco? No, I haven't. Similar idea to Berkshire Hathaway, but much smaller. No, I haven't. What do you think of gold? I own some gold. I think it's going up. I think it's going up above 2,000 almost for certain. Within 5 years, you might even see $5,000 gold. I wouldn't be surprised. Does that mean pile into gold? No. I mean, a lot of things can potentially give you a three-bagger. Right? Remember, gold from this level to 5,000 is only a three-bagger. You might find a lot of things that are better than three-baggers, but gold has a unique property of doing very well in stagflation. Most other things don't. Do you think S&P is better than Berkshire? I don't know. I'm not buying either of them. I don't hate either of them, but I'm not buying either of them. Not my cup of tea. Any insights into Baidu autonomous driving comparing to Google's Baidu autonomous driving? No particular insights, but knowing what they do, probably shit. They can't even get their search right after, I don't know, decades. And why I say that? Let's just search for something and you can see how bad they are. Obviously, we're not going to search for Pornhub, which is prominently displayed on my thing, but that's illegal in China. So we'll search for something that's legal in China, for example. And we'll do that in Chinese to give Baidu the best edge. So let's search for... Let's search for, say, hydropower, okay? Okay, so this is what Google shows. The first thing is Wikipedia in Chinese. Second one is Baidu Baike, which is like Baidu's version of Wikipedia. It has a thing which shows you what it does in English, unfortunately, because Google. And it has some YouTube videos on how hydropower works, some YouTube video on pocket hydropower stations, and some other things. And then you have some periodicals, and you have some Chinese research thingies on hydropower. Okay, so now let's go to Baidu. Blah. Let's do the same thing. Okay, so yeah, you already noticed something. First is this is ads. These are ads. And they're selling me. I mean, it's okay if they sell me things, but hydropower, like, what? I'm not gonna. Most of the people searching for hydropower is trying to figure out what that does. Right? It's like this is selling me 40 yuan for anti-dust paint. This is an actual turbine with a generator. Same thing with a turbine generator. Again, turbine with generator. And they are very far from me. I'm in Shanghai. I cannot buy these things. There's no river around me. There's no, I mean, there is a river, but the river is like flat, right? I don't have a gorge. I don't have a elevation change here. Like, why are you selling me this? I'm not buying them. And the next thing is the same periodical that we saw over here. And then it's Baidu's version of Wikipedia. Then we have some pictures. No videos up to now. They have some videos over here. And then you have a company that's not even very prominent. I've never heard of this company. It's called Xinhua Hydropower, and it's very well funded, apparently. But why are you giving me that information? And then again, you have some website that's like for this particular industry. And here you have some you have what? Oh, and these are videos from Baidu's video service, and then you have a guy showing you how to make a hydropower, and then some guy that invented hydropower, and then selling you some hydropower generators. And okay, on the 5th video, now you say there's a video on a 3D video on how hydropower works, and the next two are all hydro. So you got a bunch of ads basically, even in the video. And then more ads on people trying to sell generators. Like, no. Judging by where I am from, where I'm searching, I'm not going to buy generators. Like, what the? And more ads on generators. Okay, now you see my problem with Baidu. Like, a third, if I'm being generous, a third of this freaking page is ads, and more ads over here. And then some random shit that has nothing to do with hydropowers over here was N95s, some pedophiles, some thing with COVID-19 and more COVID-19s and more pedophiles and stuff. What? And this is what you have in